Welcome to Inside Vietnam. I'm your host, and today we're sharing a story that's going to stick with you. This is Brendan O'Sullivan, 67 years old, from Cork, Ireland. Spent his whole life as a mechanic, never married, worked until his body gave out. When retirement hit and his pension barely covered the basics back home, he did what thousands of Western men do. Every year he looked. East Vietnam promised sunshine, affordability, maybe a second chance at life. The math looked perfect on paper. What happened next changed everything. Here's his story, in his own words. My name's Brendan O'Sullivan, and I spent 43 years under the bonnet of other people's cars. Started at McCarthy's Auto Repair in Cork when I was 21, fresh out of school with no qualifications and no prospects. Turned out I had a knack for engines, for diagnosing problems from the sound alone, for coaxing life out of machinery that should have been scrapped years prior. The work suited me. Didn't require much talking, just patience, and knowing how things fit together. The bedsit above the chipper on Barrack Street became home around 1995. Single room, hot plate, shared jacks down the hall, the perpetual smell of vinegar and cooking oil seeping through the floorboards. Rent was cheap, location was central, and I was never there anyway except to sleep. My life was work. The pub on Friday nights with the lads from the shop, then back to work. 43 years of that. Never married because I was married to the job, I suppose. Never traveled because where would I go and with what money? Never complained because what was the point? You do your work, you collect your pay, you get on with it. That's the Cork way, isn't it? Then at 64, my heart decided it had enough. I was lifting a gearbox at the shop when the pain hit, like someone driving a screwdriver through my chest. Collapsed right there on the garage floor. Don't remember much after that until I woke up in Cork University Hospital with tubes in my arms and a cardiologist standing over me looking serious. Your working days are done, he said. No more heavy lifting, no more long hours on your feet, no more stress. The heart attack was a warning. Early retirement or early grave, my choice. He made it sound simple. The pension worked out to 1,100 euros a month. Sounds all right until you do the sums. 750 for rent on the bedsit, another 100 for utilities, food, the odd pint. What's left doesn't cover much, especially not heating during an Irish winter. I spent 3 months recuperating in that bedsit, watching the walls close in, feeling the damp creep through my bones, realizing I'd worked 43 years for absolutely nothing. No savings, no property, no wife, no children. Just a dodgy ticker and a state pension that meant choosing between heating and eating come December. I started watching YouTube to pass the time. Algorithm's a clever thing, isn't it? Once you watch one video about expat retirement, it feeds you 20 more. Dan and Da Nang, Mike's Vietnam Life, channels with lads my age sitting on beaches, eating cheap food, talking about how their pensions stretched 3 times further in Southeast Asia. The videos were all the same formula, really. Sunshine, smiling locals, beautiful beaches, cost of living breakdowns that made Ireland look like a scam. $300 for a decent studio. $10 daily food budget, $50 for entertainment. Add it up and you could live comfortably on $1,000 to $1,500 a month. My pension was $1,200 after conversion. The comments were what got me. Men like me saying they'd made the leap, best decision of their lives, wished they'd done it sooner. Lads from Manchester and Birmingham and Dublin who'd been where I was, feeling invisible and useless and poor in their own countries, now living like kings in Vietnam or Thailand or the Philippines. Respect, they said. The locals treated them well. Young women who appreciated older men, who valued stability over looks. I'm not stupid, I knew what that meant, but it planted a seed. By the time I hit 67, the Irish winter was closing in again. November rain, heating bills I couldn't afford. Another year of the same gray existence stretching ahead. My cousin Declan came round the bedsit one evening, saw me sitting in the cold with a blanket over my shoulders, and asked if I was all right. I told him I was grand, just being careful with the electric. He knew I was lying. I'd been watching the videos for months by then. One channel broke it down so clearly it felt like a sign. Studio apartment near my K Beach in Da Nang, $280 monthly. Breakfast banh mi, 50 cents. Coffee, 40 cents. Dinner, $2. Motorbike rental, $60. Entertainment, $50. The bloke added it up on screen, came to just over $1,000 a month for a comfortable life. Beaches, sunshine, cheap beer, a social scene of other expats. Everything my pension couldn't buy in Cork. I booked a ticket on a Wednesday. One way to Da Nang, leaving in 3 weeks. Didn't tell Declan until the Friday, after I'd already paid. He thought I'd lost my mind. Vietnam? I'd never been further than Dublin, and now I was moving to Southeast Asia? What about my health, my medications? What if something happened? Who did I know there? What was the plan? Sure, look it, I told him. What can you do? Can't afford to live here anymore. He tried to talk sense into me, said I should apply for housing assistance, talk to social services, come stay with him and his family in Dublin until I figured things out. But I'd made the decision. 3 weeks later, I was in a taxi to Cork Airport with one suitcase and €2,000 in savings I'd scraped together from birthday money and selling what little I owned. Declan drove me, didn't say much. At the departures gate, he hugged me, said to call if I needed anything, made me promise to be careful. I promised. Didn't know what I was promising to be careful about exactly. The whole thing felt like sleepwalking. 67 years old, dodgy heart, moving to a country I couldn't find on a map 6 months prior, based on YouTube videos and desperation. But desperation's a powerful motivator, isn't it? When your choices are freeze in a court bedsit, or take a chance on something different, the gamble doesn't seem so mad. On the flight over, cramped in economy for 13 hours with a connection in Dubai, I kept asking myself the same question. What's the worst that could happen? The videos made it look so easy. The expats in the comments made it sound like paradise for pensioners. Cheap, warm, welcoming. A place where $1,200 a month meant living instead of surviving. Looking back now, I should have asked a different question. Not what's the worst that could happen, but what am I really running from? Because I wasn't moving to Vietnam. I was running from loneliness, from invisibility, from the feeling that my life had amounted to 43 years of oil stains and an early heart attack. Vietnam was just the destination the algorithm sold me. Could have been Thailand, the Philippines, anywhere the exchange rate was favorable and the loneliness felt escapable. But you don't think like that when you're desperate, do you? You think the problem is geography. You think sunshine and cheap rent will fix what's broken inside. You think maybe, just maybe, you'll find something in a foreign country that you couldn't find at home. Connection. Purpose. Someone who sees you as more than just another invisible old lad. The plane touched down in Da Nang on a September afternoon, and the heat hit me like opening an oven door. Humid, thick, the kind of warmth that soaks through your clothes in seconds. I'd never felt anything like it. In Cork, even summer barely cracks 20 degrees. This was 35 and climbing. I had no idea what was coming. No idea that 3 weeks later I'd meet someone who'd make me feel seen for the first time in decades. No idea that feeling would cost me everything I had left. No idea that a year from now I'd still be here, trapped in a country I can't afford to leave, surviving on $15 a day, wondering how loneliness could make a man so spectacularly stupid. But that September afternoon, stepping out of Da Nang International Airport into the chaos of motorbikes and taxi touts and tropical heat, I still believed the videos, still believed the math, still believed that escape was possible and paradise was affordable. And maybe, just maybe, I deserved a second chance. Sure, look it, I thought. What's the worst that could happen? The taxi from the airport to my studio cost 200,000 dong. The driver tried to charge me 300, but I'd done my homework on the expat forums, knew the going rate, still felt like robbery until I converted it proper. 200,000 dong, $8, the entire journey. Back home, a taxi from the airport to Cork City Centre would have run €40 easy. The studio I'd found on a Facebook group called Da Nang Expats was in a narrow alley off Vo Nguyen Giap Street, about 10 minutes walk from Mai Key Beach. $280 a month? Paid 3 months up front through bank transfer to a Vietnamese landlord who spoke no English but whose daughter handled the transaction via WhatsApp. The building was concrete, 5 stories, my room on the 3rd floor with no lift. The climb nearly did me in that first day, heart hammering, sweat pouring, sitting on the landing halfway up, wondering if this was how it ended. But the room itself was grand. Bigger than my court bedsit, actually. Tiled floor, small balcony overlooking the back alley, a bed, a wardrobe, a hot plate, and a bathroom with a toilet, and one of those shower heads mounted right over it, so the whole room gets wet when you wash. No separation, just tiles and a drain in the floor. Took some getting used to. The air conditioner worked, though, and that first evening when I got it running, I nearly cried from relief. Cool air, imagine that. In Cork, I'd been sitting in blankets. From the balcony, I could see motorbikes parked below, laundry hanging on lines, a small shrine with incense and oranges, And if I leaned out far enough, a sliver of blue at the end of the street, the beach, the South China Sea, I was actually here. The first 3 weeks were everything the videos promised. Better even. I'd wait to the sound of motorbikes revving, vendors calling out, the city already alive at 6 in the morning. I'd walk down to the corner for breakfast, a stall run by an older woman who'd smile and hand me a banh mi without me saying a word. Pork, pate, pickled vegetables, cilantro, chili, all stuffed in a crispy baguette for 12,000 dong. 50 cents. Impossible. Then iced coffee from the next stall, sweet and strong, another 10,000. By 7 in the morning, I'd eaten breakfast for less than €1 and felt like I'd discovered something the rest of the world was missing. My K Beach became a daily habit. I'd walk there after breakfast, sit on the sand, watch the waves. The beach stretched for miles, white sand, clear water, palm trees along the promenade, tourists, sure, but also Vietnamese families, kids playing football, old men doing exercises. It felt alive in a way Cork never did. I'd sit there for hours sometimes, just existing in the warmth, feeling my bones thaw out after 67 years of Irish damp. The cost of everything kept stunning me. Com tam for dinner, broken rice with grilled pork and a fried egg, 50,000 dong at the local spots, $2. A fresh coconut, 15,000. A bowl of pho, 30,000. Beer at the corner shop, 12,000. I'd been tracking every expense in a notebook, convinced I'd miscalculated somewhere, but the numbers held. My pension of €1,100 converted to about 30 million dong monthly. Rent was 7 million. Food maybe 5 or 6 if I ate local. Utilities, another million. Entertainment, transport, miscellaneous, maybe 3 million total. I had breathing room. Actual savings potential. For the first time in my adult life, money wasn't the main source of stress. I joined the Da Nang Expats Facebook group properly. Started attending the Friday meetups at Sunshine Bar near Thuong Beach, mostly Americans and Brits, some Aussies, a few Europeans. Retired blokes like me. Digital nomads half my age working remotely. English teachers, the occasional business owner. Everyone had a story about why they'd come, what they'd left behind. The common thread was escape. From taxes, from ex-wives, from careers that broke them, from countries that didn't value them anymore. The older guys, the ones my age, they nearly all had Vietnamese girlfriends or wives. Younger women, usually 30s or 40s, always stunning, always attentive. The dynamic was obvious, but nobody said it outright. Over beers one Friday, a British bloke named Mike, maybe 70, bought around and gave the unofficial welcome speech. Watch out for bar girls, he said. Gold diggers. Women who'll take you for everything. They're professionals, know exactly what they're doing. If she asks for money in the first month, run. If her family suddenly has emergencies that require your cash, run. If she won't introduce you to her real friends or family, run. The other men nodded along. They all had stories. A mate who'd lost 20 grand building a house for a woman who disappeared. An American who'd married a girl and found out she had 3 other foreign boyfriends sending money. A German whose wife cleaned out his bank account and filed for divorce the day she got her visa to Germany. The warnings were well-intentioned, delivered with the weary wisdom of men who'd seen it all. I listened, felt superior. I wasn't here for that. Wasn't interested in paying for companionship or getting tangled up with women young enough to be my daughter. I just wanted peace. Affordability. A bit of sunshine before the next heart attack finished what the first one started. The romantic angle the other expats were navigating seemed exhausting and transactional and sad, frankly. I'd been alone 67 years, could manage a few more. Then my rented motorbike broke down. I'd been using it to explore beyond the beach, riding up to Son Tre Peninsula, around the bay, getting a feel for the city. Automatic scooter, easy enough even for someone who'd never ridden before. But the clutch started slipping in week 3, the acceleration cutting out randomly. Dangerous, really. I took it to a small place I'd noticed near Thuong Beach. Combination cafe and repair shop, plastic tables out front, motorbikes in various states of dismantlement in the back. The owner was an older Vietnamese man, maybe 60, weathered face, missing a few teeth, hands as oil-stained as mine used to be. His English was minimal, but he understood motorbikes. I tried explaining the problem through gestures and simplified words, but couldn't get it across properly. Finally, I just pointed to the workshop, asked if I could show him. He nodded. I rolled the bike into the back, popped the seat, accessed the clutch assembly. Could hear it immediately when I revved the engine, that telltale slipping sound. 43 years as a mechanic, you don't forget. I gestured to show him what I meant, pointed out where the problem was. His face lit up. He disappeared inside, came back with tools, and we spent the next 20 minutes diagnosing it together. Him talking in Vietnamese, me responding in English, neither understanding the words, but both understanding the machinery. The fix needed parts he didn't have in stock. He'd order them, have them in a few days. But he was impressed, kept saying something that sounded like praise, clapping me on the shoulder, brought out iced coffee, insisted I sit at one of the cafe tables, wouldn't let me pay. His name was Hai, I gathered. He kept pointing at himself and repeating it. I pointed at myself. Brendan. He attempted it, came out more like Brendan, but close enough. Over the next few days, I kept going back, helped him with small repairs while waiting for my part to arrive. Adjusted a carburetor on a Honda Wave, diagnosed an electrical problem on a Yamaha Exciter, fixed a slipping belt on a vintage Vespa. Hai would offer coffee, sometimes lunch, pho, or rice with whatever he had cooking. We'd sit at the plastic tables, him smoking cigarettes and talking to other Vietnamese men who'd stop by, me just being present, useful for the first time since the heart attack forced me into retirement. It was there, on a Tuesday morning in late September, that I met Lynn. She came in pushing a motorbike, a small Yamaha Sirius, asking Hai about a tire change. I was at one of the tables drinking coffee, half paying attention. She was Vietnamese, late 30s, I'd guess, petite, dressed for work in black trousers and a white blouse, her hair pulled back. She spoke to Hai in Vietnamese but seemed frustrated, pointing at the rear tire which was clearly worn down. Then she noticed me, did a small double take, probably surprised to see a foreigner there. Hai called me over, gestured between us, said something I didn't catch. Lynn smiled, tentative, said hello in careful English. I said hello back. She asked if I worked there. I laughed, explained I was just helping out, passing time, used to be a mechanic back home. Where's home? She asked. Ireland, Cork. She'd never heard of it, thought Ireland was all Dublin. I explained it was the second city, down south. The real capital, as far as anyone from Cork is concerned. She laughed at that. While Hai changed her tire, we talked. Her English was decent, better than most locals I'd encountered. She worked as a seamstress at a shop in Hai Châu district, made custom áo dai, the traditional Vietnamese dresses. Had a daughter, 14 years old, studying hard, wanted to be a doctor. The girl lived with Lynn's mother in Hue, where the schools were better. Lynn made the trip to visit every few weeks. I mentioned I'd been in Da Nang almost a month, was still figuring things out, finding my way around. She seemed genuinely interested, asked how I liked it, what I thought of the food, the heat, the traffic. When I made a self-deprecating joke about my Cork accent being too thick for most people to understand, she laughed properly, said she understood me fine, that I spoke more clearly than the Americans she sometimes encountered who talked too fast. The conversation was easy, natural. No agenda, no awkwardness, just two people talking while a tire got changed. She asked what brought me to Vietnam. I gave the simple version, retired early, pension went further here, wanted some sunshine. Left out the heart attack, the desperation, the bedsit. She nodded like that made perfect sense. When Hai finished, she paid him 60,000 dong, thanked him in Vietnamese. Then she turned to me, smiled, said it was nice meeting me. I said likewise. She hesitated, then asked if I used Zalo, the messaging app everyone in Vietnam uses. I had it on my phone but barely knew how it worked. She added me, her profile picture showing her with her daughter, both smiling at a beach somewhere. Maybe coffee sometime? She said. If you want to know more good local places to eat, I said sure, that'd be grand. She smiled again, got on her motorbike, and drove off into the Da Nang traffic. Hai was grinning at me when I turned around. He said something in Vietnamese, clearly teasing. I shrugged, played it off, just friendly conversation. But walking back to my studio that afternoon, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades, seen. Someone had looked at me, talked to me like I was a person worth knowing, not just the mechanic, or the old lad at the bar, or the invisible bachelor. Looking back now, I can see that's where it started, not with deception or manipulation, but with something more dangerous. Connection, or the illusion of it. After 67 years of being invisible, someone smiled at me and asked about my life and seemed to actually care about the answer. That's a powerful drug for a lonely man. The videos never warned about that. Lynn messaged me 2 days later. Just a simple hello on Zalo, asking how I was settling in, if I'd tried any new restaurants. I responded right away, probably too eager, suggested we meet for that coffee she'd mentioned. She agreed. The next afternoon, a small cafe near Han Market, she knew. Local place, plastic chairs, no English menu. I arrived early, nervous in a way I hadn't been since I was 20. She showed up on her motorbike, still in work clothes, apologizing for being a few minutes late. The seamstress shop had been busy, a wedding order running behind schedule. We ordered Cafe Soie da, the iced coffee with condensed milk that I'd become addicted to. 15,000 dong each, 30 cents total. She insisted on paying for both, waving away my protest. Her treat, she said, for helping Hai with the motorbikes. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a routine. Coffee once or twice a week, sometimes at that same cafe, sometimes at places she'd suggest. She took me to a Comtam shop tucked down an alley in Thon Khe district, where the portions were massive and cost 40,000 dong, a bonseo place near the cathedral where they made the crispy pancakes fresh to order. The affordable section of Han Market, where locals bought vegetables and meat, not the tourist section with the inflated prices and aggressive vendors. I appreciated it. She was showing me real Da Nang, not the expat bubble I'd been living in. The conversations deepened too. She asked about my heart condition, seemed genuinely concerned when I mentioned the attack, the early retirement. Asked what I missed most about Ireland. The green, I told her. The rain, believe it or not. The familiar faces at McCarthy's, even if we never talked much. Home, basically. Even a home that didn't work anymore. She understood that, she said. She'd left her village near Hue at 18, come to Da Nang for work, sent money back to her mother. It was expected, the eldest daughter's duty. But she missed the countryside sometimes, the quiet, the slower pace. Here, everything was motorbikes and noise and tourists. Then she told me about her ex-husband. They'd married young, had Mai right away. He'd worked construction, good money when the work was steady, but he gambled. Started small, lottery tickets, football bets with friends. Got worse. Borrowed money from her family, from loan sharks, lost it all. She left him when Mai was 5. Took the girl to Hue to live with her mother where she'd be safe, away from the debt collectors. The divorce was never official, just separated. But he wasn't in the picture anymore. Lived somewhere in Saigon now, she thought. Didn't send money for Mai, didn't call. She seemed embarrassed telling me this, like it reflected poorly on her judgment. I told her we all make mistakes when we're young, that she'd done the right thing protecting her daughter. She smiled at that, said most men didn't understand. They judged her for being divorced, for raising a child alone, for not remarrying. Vietnamese culture, she explained. Women were supposed to stay married no matter what. Her family pressured her constantly to find someone new, settle down proper, give Mai a father figure. But she didn't trust easily anymore, couldn't afford another mistake. I found myself thinking about her between our meetings, not romantically exactly. Or maybe I was lying to myself about that too. It wasn't attraction in the physical sense, though she was attractive. It was something deeper, more desperate. The feeling of being seen. Lynn asked follow-up questions about things I'd mentioned weeks earlier. Remembered that I'd worked at McCarthy's for 43 years, that my cousin Declan lived in Dublin, that I'd never been on a plane before coming to Vietnam. She treated my opinions like they mattered, listened when I explained how a two-stroke engine worked or why Irish weather was so unpredictable. In Cork, I'd been invisible, the mechanic, the bachelor, the old lad nursing a pint alone at the bar, 67 years of that. Then this woman half my age was asking about my life, laughing at my stories, acting like spending time with me was something she wanted to do, not something she had to do. Looking back now, I should have seen it. Should have asked myself why a 38-year-old Vietnamese woman would want to spend hours with a broke 67-year-old Irish mechanic with a dodgy heart. But I didn't ask. Didn't want to know the answer. Because for the first time in decades, I felt like I mattered to someone. The first financial involvement happened in early November, about 6 weeks after we met. Lynn's motorbike broke down again, the same Yamaha Sirius from that first meeting at Hai's Cafe. The clutch this time, completely shot. She messaged me apologetically, said she wouldn't normally ask, but did I know where she could get it fixed cheaply? Hai's place was too expensive for a full clutch replacement, quoted her 4 million dong. 4 million dong. I did the conversion, about $170. Nothing by Irish standards, but for her it was significant. She'd have to save for months, she said. Might take the bike to a cheaper place across town, hope they didn't make it worse. Or maybe just save up slowly, take the bus to work in the meantime. 45 minutes each way instead of 15. I offered immediately. I'm the mechanic, I said. This is what I do. I can fix it myself, just need to order the part. She refused at first, said she couldn't accept, it was too much. But I persisted. Sure, look it, what's €150 between friends? I'd been living lean, my budget was working, I had breathing room. And honestly, I wanted to help. Wanted to be useful. Wanted her to need me, even if just for this. She accepted finally, tearful, promised to pay me back as soon as she could. I ordered the clutch assembly online, had it shipped to High's Cafe, installed it myself over a weekend. Took maybe 3 hours total, muscle memory from 40 years of similar repairs. Lynn picked up the bike on Monday evening, tried to give me money, 200,000 dongs she'd scraped together. I refused. Friends don't charge friends, I said. She cried then properly, hugged me right there in front of High's Cafe, said she'd never met anyone as kind as me, that Vietnamese men wouldn't help without expecting something in return. Her exact words. I felt 10 feet tall walking back to my studio that evening. Useful, needed, important. A week later, she brought food to my place as thanks. Bon gizaos she'd made herself, the crispy rice pancakes stuffed with pork and shrimp. We ate together on my balcony, looking out at the alley below. The motorbikes, the laundry, the evening chaos of Da Nang. It was the first time she'd visited my studio. She looked around at my sparse belongings, the single room, the basic furniture, asked if I was lonely here. Sometimes, I admitted. Ireland was lonely too, but at least it was familiar. Here, everything was foreign, even the loneliness felt different. She nodded, said she understood that feeling. After her husband left, after she moved back with her mother, she'd felt alone, even surrounded by family. They loved her but didn't see her, didn't understand what she'd been through. Just wanted her to move on, remarry, pretend the past hadn't happened. She took my hand then, just briefly, a gesture that felt intimate without being sexual. I understand loneliness too, she said. Maybe we don't have to be lonely together. I don't remember what I said in response, something inadequate probably. But after she left that evening, I sat on the balcony for hours, replaying the moment, the hand-holding, the implication. Maybe we don't have to be lonely together. It felt like a door opening, an invitation to something I'd never imagined possible at 67. We started seeing each other more after that, 3 times a week, then 4. Coffee in the mornings before her work, dinner at my place or cheap local restaurants in the evenings. She brought me to a temple her grandmother frequented, explained the rituals, the incense, the offerings, took me to the affordable shops where she bought fabric for her ao dye work, introduced me to the owners in Vietnamese, seemed proud to have me there. I stopped going to Sunshine Bar. The other expats had started noticing, offering those knowing looks, making comments about my Vietnamese girlfriend. One American, maybe 65, pulled me aside. One Friday, warned me about getting too involved too fast. They're skilled at this, he said. Make you feel special, make you feel needed, then the requests start. Family emergencies, sick relatives, business opportunities. Before you know it, you're broke and alone again. I bristled at that, told him Lynn wasn't like that. She had a job, a daughter, a life of her own. She'd never asked me for anything. The motorbike repair didn't count, I'd offered. She wasn't some bar girl working foreigners for money. She was genuine. He shrugged, said he hoped I was right, but the pattern was always the same. They never asked directly at first. That's what made it effective. I left the bar angry, didn't go back for weeks. Didn't want their cynicism infecting what I had with Lynn, because what I had felt real, felt different, felt like maybe, finally. After 67 years of being invisible and alone, someone saw me as more than just a wallet or a convenience. Someone valued me for who I was. The other expats were just bitter, I told myself. Failed relationships had made them paranoid. They couldn't imagine that genuine connection was possible, so they assumed every Vietnamese woman was running a scam. But Lynn was different. I was sure of it. Looking back now, I can see how perfectly it was constructed. The slow build, the shared loneliness, the vulnerability she showed me, the ex-husband story, the pressure from her family, making me feel like her protector, her friend, her equal, rather than her mark. The hand-holding that felt spontaneous, but probably wasn't. The gratitude over the motorbike repair that was just genuine enough to bypass my defenses, but I couldn't see it then. Didn't want to see it, because the alternative was going back to being invisible, and I'd rather believe a beautiful lie than face an ugly truth. That's what loneliness does. Makes you stupid. Makes you ignore every warning sign because the fantasy feels better than the reality you're running from. And I was running. From Cork, from the bedsit, from 67 years of oil stains and heart attacks and dying alone. Lynn was the destination I'd convinced myself Vietnam would provide. Someone who saw me, someone who needed me, someone who made the loneliness feel escapable. The expats at Sunshine Bar were right, of course. The pattern was always the same. But you don't see patterns when you're inside them, desperate and hopeful and willing to believe anything that makes the pain stop. I was already in too deep, I just didn't know it yet. By month 4, Lynn had become my entire world. I'd stopped going to Sunshine Bar entirely, avoided the expat Facebook group, kept to myself and to her. My days had structure again, purpose, morning coffee with Lynn before she went to the seamstress shop. Afternoons at High's Cafe helping with repairs. Evenings either at my studio or at small local restaurants she'd pick. Always somewhere cheap, always somewhere real. She introduced me to her daughter properly in late November. Video call on Zalo. The girl appearing on screen from Hugh, her grandmother's house, visible in the background. Mai was 14, shy but polite, spoke decent English from school, asked me questions about Ireland with genuine curiosity. Is it true it rains every day? Do you really have castles? What's snow like? I answered as best I could, tried not to seem too eager, too invested. But the interaction felt wholesome, family-oriented. Lynn sat beside me during the call, translating occasionally when Mai's English faltered, smiling like she was proud of us both. After we hung up, she thanked me for being kind to her daughter, said Mai didn't have men in her life she could look up to. Her father was useless, her uncles distant. This meant something. I allowed myself to imagine it then. A future where I was part of something. Where I wasn't just a pensioner marking time until the next heart attack, but someone's partner, someone's almost stepfather, someone who mattered beyond fixing motorbikes for beer money. At 67, after a lifetime of being alone, the fantasy felt almost possible. The second financial request came in early December. Lynn mentioned it casually over dinner at my studio, rice and vegetables she'd brought from the market, cooked on my hot plate. Mai's school fees were due, she said. 6 million dong for the semester, about $280. She'd been saving, had most of it, but came up short. Her mother's diabetes medication had been more expensive than usual, ate into what she'd set aside. She looked stressed talking about it, thinner than when we'd first met. Said she might have to pull Mai out of the private school, send her to a public one. Save money that way. I couldn't stomach the thought. Education was important, I said. I'd never had much myself, left school at 16 for the garage, always regretted it. Mai was bright, wanted to be a doctor. Couldn't let money get in the way of that. What else am I spending money on? I said. My budget's working. I can help. Lynn refused at first, said it was too much, she couldn't accept. But I insisted. It's a loan if that makes you feel better, I said, though we both knew I didn't mean it. She accepted finally, crying, promising to pay me back as soon as she could. I transferred the money through the bank, watched my balance drop from 12 million dong to 6 million. Still had my pension coming in monthly, I told myself. Still had breathing room. 3 weeks later, it was her mother's medication again. The diabetes was worsening, Lynn explained. Doctor and Hugh prescribed new insulin, the good kind, not covered by Vietnamese insurance. 2 million dong, $95. Lynn had skipped lunch at work for a week trying to save money, looked visibly thinner. I gave her the cash without hesitation. Then in January, it was motorbike registration fees. 1 million dong, about $40. Then her landlord raised her rent unexpectedly. She was short 1.5 million, about $60. Each time, Lynn was embarrassed. Each time, she cried and promised repayment. Each time, I told myself I was just helping someone I cared about through temporary hardship. I started tracking it in a notebook. Not because I wanted the money back, but because I needed to see it written down, needed to convince myself the numbers made sense. By late January, I'd given Lynn about 18 million dong total, $750 beyond the original motorbike repair. Added together, nearly $1,000 over 4 months. More than 2 months of my pension converted to dong. My own budget was tighter now. I'd stopped eating out entirely except when with Lynn. Breakfast was still the bane me from the corner, but lunch was instant noodles in my studio. Dinner was rice and whatever vegetables were cheapest at the market. I skipped refilling one of my heart medications, the expensive one, told myself I'd catch up next month when my pension came in. But the money kept going out, and Lynn kept talking about our future. Maybe you could meet my family soon, she said one evening in February. My mother wants to meet you. She's traditional, needs time to prepare, to understand, but soon. Maybe we could find a small place together outside the city, she said another time. Rent's cheaper in the outskirts. We could save money, build something real. I let myself hope. Let myself imagine what that would look like. A small house somewhere quiet, away from the tourist chaos. Lynn working less, spending more time at home, me fixing things, being useful, having a partner for the first time in my life. It felt possible in a way nothing else ever had. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs were everywhere. Lynn was often unavailable on weekends. Visiting family, she'd say, but I couldn't come along yet. Traditional family, needed time to prepare them, needed to do it right. I'd message her on Saturday mornings, get responses hours later. Busy with my mother. Will call later. Talk soon. She was vague about where exactly her apartment was. I'd suggested visiting a few times, bringing food, helping her with something. Always an answer. It's being painted. Landlord's doing repairs. I'll come to you instead. Easier. We always met at my studio or at restaurants she'd pick. Her phone went to voicemail frequently in the evenings. I'd call after dinner, 8 or 9 o'clock, get nothing. She'd message the next morning with apologies. Fell asleep early, so tired from work. Phone was charging in the other room, didn't hear it. But I'd spent 40 years diagnosing mechanical problems, not human deception. I told myself Vietnamese culture was different, that I was being impatient, Western, expecting things to move faster than they should, that good things take time. And Lynn was being careful, protecting her daughter, making sure this was real before fully committing. The expats at Sunshine Bar would have called me an idiot, would have pointed out that I'd given a woman I'd known 4 months nearly $1,000 and hadn't met her family, hadn't seen her apartment, had nothing concrete to show for any of it, except promises and vague timelines about the future. But I didn't want to hear that. Didn't want their cynicism, because what I had with Lynn felt real in a way nothing in Cork ever had. She remembered details about my life, asked about my heart, reminded me to take my medications even as I was skipping them to afford helping her, listened when I talked about Indians or Ireland or the loneliness that had followed me across the world, made me feel seen, needed, important. That's worth $1,000, I told myself. Worth more, actually. Worth whatever it costs to not be invisible anymore. I understand now what I was really buying. Not her time or her company or her affection. I was buying the fantasy that I mattered, that after 67 years of being nobody to anyone, I'd finally found someone who saw me as something more, someone who needed me, someone who made the loneliness feel temporary instead of permanent. The math was simple, really. $1,000 over 4 months to feel like I wasn't dying alone in a foreign country. Seems like a bargain when you put it that way. Seems almost cheap. That's how they get you. Not with outright deception, but with something more powerful. Hope. The belief that this time it's different, this person is genuine, this connection is real. And by the time you realize it's not, you're too invested to walk away. The sunk cost isn't just financial, it's emotional. It's the story you've told yourself about who you are and what you found and why this time, finally, you're not alone. I was in deep by February, deeper than I knew, but the worst was still coming. And I had no idea. Month 6 started with me doing the math, sitting on my balcony one February evening with the notebook open, adding it up proper. Since meeting Lynn, I'd given her 70 million dong, just over $3,000 when converted. That's more than 2 full months of my pension gone. The 2,000 euros I'd brought from Ireland as a safety buffer, nearly wiped out. I was eating instant noodles twice a day now, skipping my expensive heart medication entirely, buying the cheap rice from the market that the locals wouldn't touch. My chest hurt more frequently, that familiar tightness I remembered from before the first attack. I told myself it was stress, anxiety, nothing serious. Declan had sent photos from Cork in late January. Snow covering Patrick Street. People bundled in coats I couldn't afford when I lived there. "Look at this," he'd written. "Aren't you glad you left?" I stared at those photos for an hour. Was I glad? The weather was warmer here, sure. But I was broker, lonelier in some ways, and 8 million dong deep in something I couldn't quite name. Then Lynn presented what she called the opportunity. She came to my studio on a Tuesday evening in mid-February with food from the market. We ate together like we often did, her cooking on my hot plate, me watching her move around the small space like she belonged there. After dinner, she seemed nervous, checking her phone, starting conversations, then trailing off. Finally, she said she needed to talk to me about something important. Her family owned land, she explained, in the countryside outside Da Nang, near Hoa Vang district. Been in the family for generations, but sitting empty now. Just rice paddies. Nobody farmed anymore. Her uncle wanted to sell his portion to developers, but Lynn had a better idea. If they could build a small house there, maybe $8,000 to $10,000 total, they could rent it out to Vietnamese families. Generate maybe $200 monthly income. In a few years, it would pay for itself, then become pure profit. Better yet, she and I could eventually move there together. Lower cost of living, peaceful, away from the tourist chaos and the noise. She could quit the stressful seamstress job. I wouldn't have to worry about rent increases eating into my pension. She showed me photos on her phone. Green rice paddies stretching to mountains, a dirt road, sky so blue it looked fake. Beautiful countryside. Quiet. The kind of place a man could breathe. I felt my gut tighten. $8,000. I didn't have $8,000. Had maybe 500 euros left in my account. Pension coming in monthly but barely covering expenses now that I was helping Lynn. But she wasn't asking for all of it, she said quickly. She'd been saving, had about $2,000 herself. Her mother could contribute $1,000 from selling some gold jewelry. They just needed $5,000 to start construction. Once the house was built and rented, I'd get my money back within 2 years, guaranteed. Plus, we'd have our future secured, together, away from the city. She had paperwork. Pulled documents from her bag, spread them on my floor. Vietnamese text, official-looking stamps, red ink, columns of numbers. Meant absolutely nothing to me but looked legitimate. Land certificates, she said. Construction permits. All approved, ready to go. Just needed the money to start. I should visit the land first, I said. See it myself, make sure it's real. Of course, she said, but it's 3 hours by motorbike, rough roads. My heart condition made long rides risky. Could I trust her? After everything we'd been through, after all she'd shared with me, didn't I believe she had our best interests in mind? You trust me, don't you? Her exact words. I wanted to say no. Wanted to ask harder questions, demand better answers, insist on seeing the land regardless of my heart, but I was exhausted from being suspicious, tired of the voice in my head that sounded like the bitter expats at Sunshine Bar. And I wanted to believe. Wanted this to be real. Wanted a future that involved more than dying alone in a studio apartment, 8,000 kilometers from home. I told her I'd think about it. She nodded, said of course, no pressure, but her uncle was meeting with developers next week, so the timeline was tight. Then she left, and I sat on the balcony until 2 in the morning doing the math. I didn't have $5,000, but I had Declan. I called him the next morning, court time, mid-afternoon. He answered on the third ring, sounded tired. Everything all right? He asked. You never call. I explained carefully. Investment opportunity, land in Vietnam. Woman I'd been seeing, serious about her. We were building something real. The returns made sense. 2 years to break even, then passive income. Could he help? Just 5,000? I'd pay him back from the rental proceeds. The silence on the other end lasted too long. Brendan, he said finally. You've been there 6 months. How well do you really know this woman? I bristled. Well enough. She's not what you're thinking. Has a job, a daughter, family. This is legitimate. Have you met her family? Seen this land? Not yet, but have you even been to her apartment? It's complicated, I said. Vietnamese culture, things move differently here. He sighed. Brendan, I love you, but this sounds like every scam story I've ever heard. Come home. Think about this clearly. If it's real, it'll still be real in a few months after you've had time to verify everything. I can't come home, I said. Can't afford it. Can barely afford to stay here. Another silence. Then, how much have you given her? I lied. A few hundred, helping with small things. This is different. The silence told me he didn't believe me. This is your inheritance, he said finally. You know that, yeah? What I'd leave you when I die. I'm giving it to you now because you're family, and I love you, and I can't watch you freeze in cork. But if I do this, if I send you 5,000 euro, that's it. I can't help again. I've got my own family, my own mortgage. This is everything. I know, I said. The call ended badly. He said he needed to talk to his wife, think it over. He'd let me know. 3 days later, the money appeared in my account. 5,300 euros after fees. Message with it, this is your inheritance, Brendan. Don't let me down. I sat in my studio staring at the bank app on my phone. 130 million dong. More money than I'd ever had at once. Lean's solution to everything. Our future in a bank transfer. I should have stopped there. Should have listened to the voice screaming that this was wrong. Should have at least insisted on seeing the land, meeting her family, getting independent verification of literally anything she'd told me. But I'd already decided. Had decided the moment I called Declan, really. Because admitting this was a scam meant admitting I was a fool, meant accepting I'd wasted 6 months and $3,000 on a lie, meant going back to being invisible and alone. And I couldn't face that, not after feeling seen, not after tasting what connection felt like, even if it was fake. I met Lynn the next day, gave her the money in cash, withdrew it from 3 different ATMs because they had daily limits, stuffed it in an envelope, handed it over at my studio. 130 million dong in Vietnamese bills, she cried. Held me, said she'd never forget my kindness, that I was building our future together, that she loved me. First time she'd said that. I love you. Those 3 words I'd waited 67 years to hear from someone. I love you too, I said. Meant it. Or thought I did. Hard to tell the difference when you're desperate. She promised to show me construction progress, introduce me to her family soon, make everything official. We'd go to Hue together, meet her mother and Mai properly, then to the land to see the house taking shape. 2 weeks, she said. Just needs time to get construction started, paperwork processed, everything arranged. For 48 hours, I felt like I'd made the right choice, like I'd finally done something that would change my life for the better instead of just surviving day to day. Then the changes started. Subtle at first. Lynn responded to messages slower, hours passing between replies instead of minutes. Canceled dinner twice in 1 week, work emergencies, she said, family obligations. When we did meet, she seemed distracted, checked her phone constantly, eyes somewhere else even when she was sitting across from me. I asked about the construction. When could I see it? Soon, she said. Paperwork's slow in Vietnam. Traditional process, lots of approvals needed. Have to be patient. When could I meet her mother? Soon, she said. She's preparing, wants everything to be right. Vietnamese culture, need to respect the formality. Could I at least visit her apartment? It's being repaired, she said. Landlord's doing renovations, place is a mess. Better to meet here, always an answer, never progress. Week 3, after the money transfer. I went to Hai's cafe hoping to see her, maybe catch her off guard, have a conversation that wasn't through a screen. Hai was working on a Honda, didn't look up when I sat down. I ordered coffee, waited. Finally asked if he'd seen Lynn recently. He looked uncomfortable. Better to ask her yourself, he said. Just wondering if she's been around, I pressed. He set down his tools, wouldn't meet my eyes. I don't want problems, he said. You and Lynn, your business. What does that mean? He shook his head. Not my place. That gut feeling I'd been suppressing for weeks tightened into something close to panic. I left the cafe, walked along my K beach trying to convince myself there was an explanation. Construction projects took time. Vietnamese bureaucracy was complicated. Lynn was busy, stressed, dealing with family issues I didn't understand. But the gut knows. 40 years of diagnosing engine problems taught me to trust that feeling when something was wrong, even if I couldn't articulate exactly what. And everything was wrong now. I'd given her 8,000 euros total. 70 million dong in small amounts, plus 130 million in a single envelope. Burned bridges with my only family member. Had 400 euros left in my account and rent due in 2 weeks. And I hadn't seen Lynn in person for 4 days. Hadn't gotten a real answer to any question in weeks. Had nothing concrete to show for any of it except promises that felt increasingly empty. I tried calling her that evening. Voicemail. Messaged on Zalo. Read but no response. Tried again the next day. Phone was off. The alternative I've been refusing to consider became unavoidable. That I've been played. That every moment, every conversation, every tear and promise and declaration of love had been performance. That the land didn't exist. The family didn't want to meet me. The future we'd planned was fiction. That I was exactly the fool the expats at Sunshine Bar had warned me about. But I couldn't accept it yet. Wouldn't let myself. Because accepting it meant accepting I was stranded in Vietnam, broke and stupid and alone. That I'd given away my cousin's inheritance for nothing. That loneliness had made me so desperate I believed an obvious lie because the alternative was unbearable. So I told myself it was just stress. Cultural differences, patience required. The same rationalizations I'd been using for months, wearing thinner now but still just strong enough to hold. 2 more days passed. Rent came due. I couldn't pay it. The landlord gave me a week extension, said if I didn't have the money by then he'd change the locks. I sat in my studio on the seventh night after giving Lin the money, adding it up again. 190 million dong total. 8,000 euros. Everything I had and everything I'd borrowed and everything I'd ever get from family. Gone. And I still couldn't admit what I knew in my gut to be true. That was the worst part. Not the money. Not even the betrayal. But my own desperate refusal to see what was right in front of me. Because seeing it meant facing what I'd become. A lonely old man who'd crossed the world chasing a fantasy, ignoring every warning, sacrificing everything for the feeling of being needed by someone who never needed him at all. I hadn't seen Lin in person for 11 days. 11 days of Zalo messages going read but unanswered, of phone calls dropping straight to voicemail, of excuses that felt increasingly transparent. Our last meeting had been brief, tense. She'd shown up 40 minutes late, claimed to be overwhelmed with family obligations, promised updates on the land construction soon, then left after 20 minutes checking her phone the entire time. The gut feeling that had sustained me through 40 years of diagnosing engine problems was screaming now. But I was paralyzed. Paralyzed by hope, by sunk cost, by the sheer impossibility of accepting what I knew to be true. I'd given her 8,000 euros, burned my relationship with Declan, had nothing left. Admitting I'd been scammed meant admitting I was stranded in Vietnam, broke, and spectacularly stupid. I went back to Sunshine Bar. Hadn't been there in 2 months, had been avoiding the place and the knowing looks and the cynicism. But I was desperate for distraction, for human contact that wasn't through a screen, for anything that might drown out the voice in my head telling me I'd ruined my life. The expats noticed immediately. Mike, the British retiree who'd warned me months ago, bought me a beer before I could refuse, asked how I'd been, gentle, like he already knew the answer. I mentioned I was seeing someone, that it was complicated. He nodded, didn't push. Just sat with me in the kind of comfortable silence men share when words would make things worse. Then an Irish accent from the end of the bar. O'Sullivan? Brendan O'Sullivan from Cork? I turned. Seamus. Another Irish expat I'd met briefly at one of the Friday meetups months back, never talked much after. He was drunk, gregarious, stumbled over with his beer. Good to see another Cork man, he said. Been too long. We chatted. About home, about the weather, about how Da Nang compared to Ireland, then about the women, inevitably. Seamus was on his third Vietnamese girlfriend, he said. This one seemed all right, but you never knew. They were all skilled at the game. Show your missus in Hoi An last week, he said casually. Didn't know you had family visiting. My blood went cold. What? Your girl, Vietnamese woman, pretty, late 30s? Was at one of the resorts with a younger Vietnamese fella. Assumed it was her brother or cousin maybe, but they seemed awful close if you know what I mean. Holding hands, laughing, acting like a couple. I couldn't breathe. Showed him a photo of Lin on my phone with shaking hands. Yeah, that's her, Seamus confirmed. Definitely her. They were having lunch by the pool. Looked happy. The bar tilted. Mike put a hand on my shoulder. The other expats had gone quiet, recognizing what was happening. Someone muttered, "Ah ma," under their breath. I left. Walked out into the Da Nang night, down to Mai Kay Beach. Sat in the sand in the dark, trying to convince myself there was an explanation. Maybe it was her brother. Maybe Seamus was drunk and wrong. Maybe there was a reason she'd be at a resort in Hoi An with a man and not tell me. But the gut knows, and the gut had been screaming for weeks. I didn't sleep that night. At dawn, I took a taxi to the address Lin had mentioned once for her apartment, a building in Hai Chow district. I'd never been to because she always had excuses. The landlord's painting, too messy, better to meet at yours. The building existed. I checked the mailboxes in the lobby, reading every name, no Lin, no variation of it. My hands were shaking. I found the security guard, showed him Lin's photo on my phone, tried to ask in broken English and gestures if he knew this woman. He looked at the photo, shook his head, said something in Vietnamese I didn't understand, gestured like he'd never seen her. I went to Hai's cafe, demanded answers. No more politeness, no more dancing around it. Hai set down his tools, looked pained. I don't want to interfere, he said. Your business. It's my money, I said. It's my life. Tell me. He sighed. Sat down at one of the plastic tables, lit a cigarette. Looked older suddenly. She pays me, he said finally. Lin. Pays me to let her meet foreign men here. Makes it look natural, like accident. She's done it before, many times. The words hit like a fist. How many times? He shrugged. I don't know. Maybe 5, 6 men I've seen. maybe more. The daughter, May, lives with her father and Hugh, full-time. They never divorced, just separated. The girl visits her sometimes, weekends, but mostly with the father. And the land, the construction? Hai looked at me with something like pity. There is no land, he said. I spent the next 2 days trying to reach her. Phone off. Zala messages delivered but not read. Then eventually I realized she'd blocked me. I went back to Hai's cafe daily, hoping she'd appear. She never did. On day 3, I received a message from an unknown number. Just 2 words in English. Sorry. Don't contact me again. That was it. No explanation, no acknowledgement of the 190 million dong she'd taken, no return of money, no apology beyond those 2 words. 8,000 euros, 6 months of my life. My dignity, my trust, my future. All gone in a text message I couldn't even respond to because the number blocked me immediately after sending. I called Declan, had no choice. The conversation was brutal. He knew before I finished the first sentence, could hear it in my voice. "Oh, Brendan," he said. "Oh no." I told him everything. The land that didn't exist, the daughter who lived with her father, Hai's confession, Seamus seeing her with another man, the 2-word message that ended it all. Declan was silent for a long time. Then, "You've got to come home." I checked flight prices while we were on the call. 850 euros, one way to Dublin. I had 340 in my account. "I can't afford it," I said. Another silence, longer this time. "Brendan," he said finally, "I can't help you. The 5,000 I sent, that was everything. I'm already stretched thin, the mortgage, the kids. My wife is furious. I sent you that money. I can't ask her for more. I can't." "I know," I said. "You need to contact the embassy," he said. "See if they can help. Maybe social services, some kind of repatriation program." "Already did," I said. "They can't fund repatriation for citizens who left voluntarily. I went there of my own free will. This is my own doing." "I'm sorry," Declan said. His voice was breaking. "I'm so sorry, Brendan. I wish I could help. I really do, but I can't." The line went dead. I sat in my studio doing the math. 340 euros. 8 million dong rent was due in 12 days. 7 million dong. I couldn't pay it. I couldn't leave Vietnam. I couldn't even afford to eat properly anymore. I tried the Irish embassy again, explained the situation to a different person, desperate for a different answer. They were sympathetic but firm. No emergency repatriation funds available. I'd left Ireland voluntarily, hadn't been coerced or trafficked. This was considered a civil matter, essentially a bad investment. They suggested I contact local police. I went to the police station in Hai Chow district with my phone, screenshots of messages, the few documents Lynn had shown me. The officers were polite, listened to my broken English explanation, looked at the evidence. "Without a contract," one said in careful English, "we cannot help." "Gifts are not theft. You gave money voluntarily, yes?" "She lied," I said. "Took my money for land that doesn't exist." "But you gave freely, no force." "I gave freely, because I was an idiot." He nodded sympathetically. "This happens many times," he said. "Many foreign men. You must be more careful next time." Next time. As if there'd be one. I sat in my studio that night with the lights off, staring at the ceiling. 340 euros. Rent due in 11 days now. After that, I'd be homeless. Couldn't afford food beyond the cheapest street vendors. Couldn't afford my medications. Couldn't leave. Couldn't stay. Couldn't do anything except exist in this limbo I'd created through my own desperate stupidity. The shame was worse than the poverty. Worse than the fear. I'd ignored every warning, dismissed every red flag, sacrificed everything for the fantasy that someone saw me as more than invisible. And now I was more invisible than ever. Broken a foreign country, abandoned by a woman who never existed in the first place, cut off from the only family I had, with nothing ahead but survival day by day, until my heart gave out or I ran out of money entirely. I thought about the YouTube videos that brought me here, the smiling expats on beaches, the cost of living breakdowns, the promises of paradise for pennies. They told me everything except the truth. That loneliness travels with you. That desperation makes you blind. That the math only works if you don't make mistakes. And lonely men always make mistakes. I couldn't pay the rent, 7 million dong, and I had 8 million in my account. Barely enough to scrape through one more month if I didn't eat. The landlord changed the locks on day 8. Everything I owned in Vietnam fit into one backpack. Mike from Sunshine Bar let me know an Australian bloke had a couch I could crash on for a bit. 2 weeks turned into the absolute limit when his Vietnamese girlfriend put her foot down. No more charity cases. I understood. Found a room in Hoa Con for 4.5 million dong monthly, $180. Far from the beach, far from tourists, far from everything the YouTube videos showed. The building's concrete walls are stained with mold. Shared bathroom down the hall that 3 families use. Always smells like sewage and bleach fighting a losing battle. Gecko droppings on my windowsill every morning. Motorbike exhaust drifts through the gaps in the window frame all night, mixing with the smell of fish sauce from the restaurant below. My neighbors are Vietnamese laborers, and one other Western man, British, maybe 75, who drinks himself unconscious most nights and hasn't spoken a word to me in 2 months. My daily budget is 350,000 dong, $15. Breakfast is a banh mi from the cheapest vendor I can find, 15,000 dong, 60 cents. Lunch is instant noodles prepared in my room with an electric kettle I bought secondhand, 35,000 for a week's supply. Dinner is com tam from the stall that stays open late and drops prices on whatever didn't sell, 35,000 if I'm lucky. Sometimes I skip it. Haven't refilled my heart medications in 3 months now. Can't afford them. The chest pain comes more frequently. That familiar tightness I remember from Cork, from the garage floor, from the hospital. Sometimes it wakes me at night and I lie there in the dark wondering if this is it. Part of me hopes it is. Would be easier than this. The shame is worse than the poverty. I can't tell anyone back home the truth. Declan stopped responding to my messages after that last phone call. Can't blame him. The lads from McCarthy's don't know I'm in Vietnam. We're never close enough to stay in touch anyway. I'm utterly alone, but this time without even the fantasy of Lynn to numb it. I think about her constantly, despite trying not to. The hand holding on my balcony. The tears when I fixed her motorbike. The promises about our future. Were any of the moments real? Or was I just a mark from that first conversation at High's Cafe? Another lonely foreigner she'd spotted and calculated and played perfectly. The not knowing is its own torture. I tried to report her. Went to the police station with screenshots, the documents she'd shown me, tried to explain in broken English what had happened. The officers were polite but firm. Without a contract, without a real name and address, without proof of theft, there was nothing they could do. Gifts aren't theft, they explained. These situations happen frequently. Be more careful next time, one officer said, as if there'd be a next time. Some days I walk to Thuong Beach, takes an hour from Hoa Con, but I've got nothing but time. Sit on the sand watching younger expats enjoy the life the YouTube videos promised. Digital nomads on laptops at beachfront cafes, retirees with Thai or Vietnamese wives who might be authentic or might not, but at least seem content in the arrangement. I can spot the transactional relationships now from 50 meters away, see the patterns I missed when I was inside one. The older Western man, the significantly younger Asian woman, the careful performance of affection. Some might be real, most aren't. Who am I to judge? The Australian from Sunshine Bar buys me dinner sometimes. Tries to convince me to swallow my pride, contact family, ask for help, go home. But that Irish working-class stoicism that sustained me through 40 years at McCarthy's won't allow it. I made my choices, have to live with them. What can he do? I say with a dark laugh. He doesn't understand. It's not really a question. I think about those YouTube videos, the smiling expats, the beach montages, the cost of living breakdowns. Wonder how many other men are living in rooms like mine. How many got sold the same dream and woke up broke and stranded? The algorithm doesn't show those stories. The retirement channels don't interview the failures. I'm 68 now. Been in Vietnam 10 months total. Lost 8,000 euros I'll never recover. Have maybe 5 million dong left in my account. 200 euros, no way to earn more. Heart can't handle manual labor, and Da Nang doesn't need English-speaking mechanics. I'll survive as long as my pension keeps hitting my account each month. But 1,100 euros doesn't go far in survival mode. The math that looked so promising on YouTube only works if you don't fall in love, don't get scammed, don't make mistakes. And lonely men always make mistakes. Loneliness makes you stupid. I spent 40 years fixing engines, diagnosing problems, understanding how things work. But I couldn't see the most obvious repair in front of me, myself. I was broken before I ever got on that plane, and YouTube made poverty look like an adventure. It's neither. It's just poverty with a beach nearby you can't afford to enjoy. If I could go back and talk to myself at 67, sitting in that cork bedsit, watching videos and booking tickets, what would I say? Don't go. Of course I'd say don't go. But would I listen? Probably not. Because I wasn't looking for facts or warnings. I was looking for permission to hope. And those videos gave me permission. The algorithm told me what I wanted to hear. That escape was possible, that I deserved better, that somewhere warm and cheap a woman might value an old mechanic from Cork. The cruelest lie wasn't Lynn's. It was my own. Do I regret coming to Vietnam? The question feels too simple. I regret trusting Lynn, regret ignoring the warnings, regret calling Declan for money, regret every decision past the moment I landed. But the underlying desperation that pushed me onto that plane, the poverty and loneliness and invisibility, those haven't changed. They're just happening under a different sky now, in a language I don't speak, in a country that doesn't want me. I'll die here eventually. That much seems certain. Can't afford to leave. Can't afford to thrive. Just existence, day by day, $15 at a time. Maybe the next heart attack will make the decision for me. Maybe that's mercy. Brendan's story isn't unique. It's a pattern we see repeatedly across Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, anywhere Western men believe their pension goes further and loneliness can be cured through geography. The details change. Sometimes it's a bar girl, sometimes it's a good woman with a job, sometimes it's a business opportunity, sometimes it's just slow financial bleed disguised as love. But the core remains the same. Vulnerable, isolated men encountering skilled operators who recognize desperation and exploit it surgically. The YouTube videos Brendan watched aren't lying, exactly. You can live in Da Nang on $1,200 monthly if you're disciplined, if you don't get involved romantically, if you maintain boundaries and realistic expectations. The math works, right until human need enters the equation, and human need always enters the equation. What happened to Brendan could happen to anyone who mistakes affordability for solution, who believes external change can fix internal emptiness. Vietnam didn't break him. He arrived broken, carrying 40 years of loneliness and a heart attack's worth of mortality awareness. Lynn just recognized the cracks and exploited them efficiently. There's no simple lesson here, no easy warning that prevents the next man from making Brendan's choices. Don't trust Vietnamese women isn't the takeaway. Plenty of genuine relationships exist. Don't move abroad when vulnerable isn't it either. Sometimes geography does help. The real lesson, if there is one, sits in Brendan's own words. Loneliness makes you stupid, and algorithms make poverty look like adventure. If you're watching this and considering a similar move to Vietnam, to Thailand, anywhere the cost of living promises relief, ask yourself, what are you running from, and what are you running toward? If the answer is away from loneliness and toward companionship, pause. Because loneliness travels with you, and companionship can't be purchased, no matter how favorable the exchange rate. Brendan's still in Da Nang, still surviving on $15 daily, still sitting in that room in Hoa Can. If you're in Vietnam and you see an older Irish man at the cheap Com Tam stands, quiet and careful with his money, that might be him. This is Inside Vietnam, where we tell the stories the algorithm doesn't show. If this resonated with you, leave a comment sharing your perspective, especially if you've seen similar situations or have warnings for others considering the same path. And if you found value here, consider subscribing. These stories matter because they're real, and they're happening to real people who deserve better than to be invisible. Until next time, stay safe, stay smart, and remember that paradise promised too easily is rarely paradise at all.